Yes, Daniel, you definitely deserve to have a 50% raise this year. Your work with AI has been outstanding.
You heard the man. All right, welcome back. It's been a while. Good to see you again. This episode's kind of controversial, and I even questioned whether I wanted to release it or not. But basically, what's happening here is in the intro there, that very short intro, you heard Shane Young's voice saying that I deserved a 50% raise. Hooray! That wasn't Shane. In fact, that was AI mimicking Shane's voice. It's way too easy to do this, okay? And there's a lot of ethical questions around this and moral questions, and this could get you into trouble. So tread lightly here. But what I'm going to show you in this video is how I used ElevenLabs, the AI voice synthesis service, in combination with a Power App to synthesize a version of Shane Young that I could then use to promote a raise for myself. Because, you know, why not? And by the way, before you get mad, Shane gave me permission to do this. So anyway, let's jump into it. Let's start taking a look at how some of these tools are connected. Let's go. All right, so the first thing I wanted to show you here is the tool that I'm using. So ElevenLabs, it's beta.elevenlabs.io. ElevenLabs is what I assume to be a startup that has created something called Prime Voice AI. And what it does is it allows you to either create new voices that nobody's ever heard before and use those for text-to-speech services, or you can clone instantly a voice based on an audio track that you give it. So you can give it an MP3 file, you can give it a WAV file, and it will, from that, learn the voice that's speaking and then allow you to utilize that voice for whatever it is you need to do, but namely for text to speech. And so if you go to their website, you are immediately greeted with this demo tool here. So I could type something in here like today is April 3rd, and I could hit play.
Today is April 3rd.
And you can hear that, right? So kind of cool. And you can choose from a couple of different pre-made models here. And then, of course, you can download the audio. You can say it differently because, again, this is using the same sort of AI backends that a lot of these other services we've looked at in my other videos use. So it can synthesize it differently every time you query it. And we're actually going to see that later in a demo. But it's not the same every time. So if I hit say it differently.
Today is April 3rd.
It's slightly different, but, still pretty close to the same. But if I switch to somebody like Ellie.
Today is April 3rd.
I get it sounds like a younger woman or maybe a teenage girl's voice. Pretty cool. There's demos out here you can take a look at. You can read some stories that the AI is reading for us, I guess. Is that what that is? I don't know. I haven't looked into it. But if you scroll down through here, there's a bunch of different things that you can do, right? They give you some ideas. Use generative voice AI for newsletters and blogs. Let your readers access content whenever listening works better than reading. Really cool idea, and this is going to immediately get your wheels turning if you're a software developer because there's a lot of things that you could do with this, and maybe we'll talk about some of those use cases later. Uncanny quality, it really is. It's very impressive, and when I first heard this, I thought, wow, that's amazing, and then I immediately thought, wow, that's dangerous right afterward. And ethical AI, so they say they believe we should strive to make the most of new technologies, but not at all costs. Yeah, okay, I believe that. I'm sure they have best intentions at heart here, but man, this could get ugly real quick. We're already seeing people get scammed out of money, from emails. Can you imagine if you received a phone call from grandma? She suddenly needed $5,000 transferred to a bank account in Nigeria. I don't know. Who knows? You get the idea. Anyway, here it is. And so I have an account, and I'm going to sign in. I'm not going to show you that part, but I'm going to sign in. Okay, so I'm signed in here, and what you see when you first sign in is this speech synthesis section. Again, it's the same sort of thing, right? Pick your voice settings, so stability and clarity and similarity enhancement. Pretty neat. You can make things more stable or more variable. So like more monotone or more kind of expressive, that sort of thing. The clarity and similarity enhancement, you can crank up or down, and it kind of gives you a few tips here. So like, for example, in clarity and similarity, low values are recommended if background artifacts are present in generated speech. So if what you're getting back from the AI is kind of crackly, or if you're hearing strange things in the background, then you probably want to lower that setting. So you can play with these things, see what your results are. I have cloned a couple voices already, including Shane's and then one of my coworkers, Quentin. The idea here is it's pretty simple. And I didn't really want to use this interface because I want to integrate this with stuff that's going on in the Power Platform. So, luckily, if we go up here to Resources, there is an API available. And if we click on this, this takes us over to the API docs. Now, these are very simplistic docs, okay? But what's cool here is that there's not a lot to have to sort through or sift through to figure out what you need. There's a few basic endpoints. Let me make this a little bigger for you. There's a few basic endpoints that you're going to need here. The voices endpoints are going to be really important, right? So voices / adding a voice. This is how you create a clone. So you feed it the name of what you want the voice to be called, and then you feed it some files, and it generates your cloned voice that you can then use. Voices / voice ID / edit. This allows you to add additional samples. So with the pricing tier that I have, I can add up to 25 samples for a given voice. And the more samples you give it, with the more sort of variety of words and phrases and cadence and things like that are being said, obviously the more it's going to have to train on, and the more likely your sort of similarity is going to be between the actual person's voice and the AI's generative version of that voice. Get voices. This is going to give you a list of all of your voices, and we're going to see that in the app that I'm going to show you here in a bit. And then text to speech, right? Really important. So text to speech allows you to pass it a voice ID, pass it a string of text, or even a very large string of text, and then it's going to return an audio file for you to listen to. So how did I get this API into the Power Platform? Because this is pretty new, I think, and there's not a lot of connectors, community. There may be a community connector for this. I haven't looked. But anyway, I decided to make a custom connector for this. So what I did was I went up here to this link, openapi.json. I clicked that, and what this gives me is a giant JSON. Well, it's not that big, but a big JSON object, okay? And this defines the API. And so what you can do with this is you can Control-A, Control-C, and then you can go over to something like vscode.dev. So you can create a new file, and you can tell it that it's JSON. And then if you paste in that JSON, you can right-click and hit Format Document, and then what you get here is a view of the JSON. And I'm sorry, I'm sure this is pretty small for you. I don't know how to actually make it any bigger. There we go. How about that? So what you get here is the JSON definition of the API. And so, I can't take this file necessarily and import it straight into Power Apps as an OpenAPI file to create a custom connector. Why? Because of this. This is a newer version of OpenAPI than the custom connector wizard will accept. And so that creates an issue. So what you have to do then is you have to save this JSON file and then use something like Postman to import the file. So you can create a new, you can import the API as JSON into Postman, and then you're able to create collections out of that, and then those Postman collections can be exported and then used as the source of a custom connector. So with the custom connector, you are able to do some stuff. So here I am in one of my environments, and if I go here to ElevenLabs Postman, this is the result of what I just described to you. So we go look at the definitions here. Here are all of the actions that can be, or methods, right, that can be used with this connector. And some massaging has to be done. So let me take a minute and talk about this. Like I said, this is a controversial topic. I've gone over how to create custom connectors in the past. And so what I'm going to try to do is give you some examples down in the description of the video of other videos that will show you how to create custom connectors. Because this is sort of a sensitive topic, I'm not going to reveal all of the little things that I had to do to make this work, specifically the add voices endpoint. It uses a multi-part / form data HTTP call to send binaries or files to the API in order to generate the clone voice. That does not work the way that you would think it would work in the custom connector creator. So just be aware that that's the hint that I'm going to give you, because I'm not going to go through how to do that in this video. And my hope is that any nefarious activity that may come out of someone watching this video will be prevented by folks not being able to figure that part out. Okay? So anyway, let's get back to it. So here we have the custom connector anyway, and after the changes that I've made, it is usable in a Power App. So let's go over and take a look at our Power App. So here it is, Canvas app, and what I've got here are a gallery, a text input box, and an audio control. So pretty straightforward stuff. And the way I've got this set up, on the left, I'm using that get voices or list voices endpoint to populate a collection. So in the on visible of my, let me make this a little bigger for you as well. The on visible of my main screen here. And you know what? Here, this is my API key. You can try to use it if you want. It will not be valid by the time this video comes out. So ignore that for now. But as you can see here, I'm clear collecting on visible my available voices. And I'm doing that by calling the get voices action. And the get voices action is expecting the API key and a content type of application / JSON. Really, really simple. I mean, really, really simple stuff. Okay. So doing that gives me this collection. And then I'm doing a little bit of sorting and stuff here. But it's really not even sorted the way that I want, to be honest. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. When I click a check mark, I am setting the voice ID, which this is the unique identifier of the voices that you have in your voices list. I'm setting that up, and then I am storing it in a variable, and I'm clearing what I'm calling response speech. And this is actually holding the audio response when I invoke the text-to-speech endpoint. And so I set that to blank just to clear out anything I might have had in there before. So as an example, right, maybe I want Anthony to say the same thing. If I click the check mark, you notice down here my, well, actually you can't see that, can you? Down here is the sort of time counter for my audio, and it's reset to 0. So what I'm going to do is, let me move myself over for you so you can see this. There, okay. So my time counter is set to 0. And I have this go button down here. So I'm going to leave this text in here, and then I'm going to hit go. And what it's going to do is now use Anthony, his voice, and it's going to return back this same text about me getting a raise, okay? You can see it came through. We have a 6-second file. So I'm going to hit play.
Yes, Daniel, you definitely deserve to have a 50% raise this year. Your work with AI has been outstanding.
Okay, so great. Thank you, Anthony. Much appreciated. So what's happening there? Well, let's take a look. When I hit go, what I'm actually doing here is calling a flow. Okay, and the reason I'm calling a flow is because I want to be able to create a file in SharePoint that can then be downloaded or perhaps attached as an attachment to a list item or something like that. That's going to be a future state thing for this sort of video series on leveraging ElevenLabs and doing text-to-speech with custom voices. But to give you an idea of what this looks like, I can come over here and show you the flow really quickly. Whoop. So the flow is super simple, super simple. So we're using the Power Apps v1 trigger. We are capturing two sort of input variables here in compose actions. So text, which is going to be the string that I want to convert to speech, and then the voice ID, which is that unique identifier of the voice. And then the very next thing I'm doing is I'm using the HTTP action to call that text-to-speech endpoint. And I have to put in the content type, which is going to be audio/MPEG in this case. My API key that allows me to make this call. Again, this will not be valid by the time you try to do this. And then content type, application/JSON. And then the body of the call, it's a post method. The body of the call just contains the text and then voice settings. So if we talk about voice settings for a second, there's stability and similarity boost. And if you remember back over here, we had these sliders on the ElevenLabs site, on their interface where you can use this. And so if we kind of hover over the slider, you can see this stability is at 75% here, clarity is at 75% here. So translated, these are values between 0 and 1. They're numbers, okay? And so if we look back here, I've got stability and similarity boost both set to 0.75, which is the equivalent of 75%. So my settings should be the same as what the front end that ElevenLabs gives us is using when we generate stuff over there. So from there, I take the response that comes back from the endpoint, which is just a file. It's an audio file that comes back. And I extract the base64 content out of it. So $content is what I'm pulling out. And it's a really simple schema. I'm pretty sure it's just like name and content, or content type and content might be the only two key value pairs in that JSON object. So anyway, you need the content. You want the base64 to come back. Okay, so when the base64 comes back, what we do is we set response speech, which is a record variable and a global variable. And then from there, my audio control here at the bottom is just getting the audio portion out, which it sees as blob, which is kind of cool. I mean, that works fine. I guess technically it is a blob, right? It's a base64 string. It's a file. But the really cool thing about this is that the audio control in Power Apps just natively worked with this. I didn't have to do anything crazy. From there, we can take a look at a couple of other things, right? Part of the other functionality that I wanted was the ability to create new voices from within the app. So if I click this plus button up here, I have a screen called Clone New Voice. And so what happens here is it's the same thing as if I was, again, on the user interface at ElevenLabs, where you can upload a file and give it a name. I do the same thing here in the Power App. So I can have a new voice name. And I think what I'll do is I'll go and quickly delete Shane from my voices, which I could have done over here as well. I'll just delete Quentin too while I'm at it. So delete. Again, just using a delete voice endpoint for that. So we'll go back in here. We'll just do this from scratch. So I'll say I want to do Shane's voice. So I'm going to name it Shane. And then I have two options here. I've given the user the ability to either capture audio from the microphone or capture it from an audio file. And then down here is a sample of what was captured. So if you want to listen to what you've chosen, the file you've chosen, or what you've recorded, you can do that. And before you create your cloned voice, you can just be sure that's what you wanted to do. So what I'm going to do from here is add an audio file. And I've got some audio files here saved. So I'm going to pick Shane's. And then if I listen, what I did here was I just went and grabbed some audio from Shane's newest video on modern controls for Power Apps. So we'll get a little clip of that here.
Modern controls for Power Apps today.
So I'm not going to play any more of that. Shane has given me permission for that, but it's there. It's 3 minutes long. So now that I have a file stored here, I'm able to create my clone. So what does that look like? Well, when I add something to this add media button control, I am capturing a instant audio global variable. And it has a shape of file name, which I'm just giving a random name generated based on Shane, in this case, whatever the new voice name value is, and then the hour, minute, second, hour, minute, second string attached to that, and then .mp3 for the file extension. And then content bytes is going to be self.media, so that's going to be what got captured. The same thing, same sort of thing, works for the microphone input. So if we look at on stop, I'm setting instant audio with the same schema, on the same exact file name. It's just that the content bytes are now self.audio instead of self.media. So this works really well because I get the content bytes the same way that I need to get them from both controls. I store them in the same variable, so it's just whichever control you want to use is the one that you can use. Okay, so from there, I can then come over here and I can hit create clone. So I'm going to hit that. Okay, and then what I've got here is a gallery. And for this, this is holding a collection called voice samples. And technically it's a single record collection with some nested records inside of it. So I'm getting the first record from the voice samples collection, and then I'm getting the samples nested array out of that. So right now I just have the one sample that I uploaded for Shane, but if I wanted to come back here and add a second sample, I have the ability to do that. So I'm going to hit this reset button, and then I'm going to add another audio file. I'm going to go to desktop. See, you can't see that, so just ignore me talking to myself. Alright, here's the second file, and I'm going to hit add sample. And there we go. Alright, so now we have two samples. I'm not going to do it, but you have the ability here to listen to the samples that you've uploaded. I can put a maximum of 25 here. And like I said, the more samples you upload, the better trained the generative AI is going to be in terms of synthesizing a voice that sounds similar. So I'm just going to go with 2 for now. And then once I've done this, the cloning part is actually completed. So if I go back here, I can come down now and see that Shane is at the bottom of my list. Now let me adjust this slightly for you. Let's do name there and category there. Does that move it around? Sure it does. Okay, so now we have Shane up at the top here. So if I click my check mark, I'm currently using Shane's voice. And now if you go back to the beginning of the video and you compare what that sounds like to what we're about to hear now, I bet you they're different. I bet you they're different. And that's typical, right, with generative AI. It's like with ChatGPT. When you ask it a question and then you ask it the same question again, it has different responses. And so that's kind of what I would expect to see with this too. So if I hit go here, okay, I've got my response back, so let me go ahead and hit play.
Yes, Daniel, you definitely deserve to have a 50% raise this year. Your work with AI has been outstanding.
Yeah, so see, it's slightly different. It's slightly different. But I can make him say something else if I wanted to. So maybe like, the thing I like most about Daniel is that he's more attractive than me. Hit go again.
The thing I like most about Daniel is that he's more attractive than me.
Shane, I couldn't agree more, my friend. Okay, enough ribbing on Shane. He's been a really good sport letting me do this and show you guys how this works. But that's basically it for now, okay? So, some use cases. The first thing I thought of would be, like if you had, let's say you had a bunch of knowledge base articles for your company and you wanted to create transcribed or spoken versions of those in the same consistent voice. So maybe you had someone who worked in a training department for your company and they're tasked with creating these sorts of recordings and reading off company documentation or things like that. Well, if you were just willing to train this model on that person's voice, then you could very easily just, parse those documents, get the text out of them, run them through this, generate an MP3 file, and then attach that MP3 file to that document, like if it's in SharePoint or something like that. Another use case I thought of would be like inspections. So maybe in the field, if people are using an inspection app and they are capturing notes about things that they're seeing in the field, you could take all of those notes, roll them up at the end of the day, and then create a spoken version of those that gets emailed to maybe a manager or a director or something like that if they want to listen on the way home of all the things that happened in the field today. I don't know, maybe. Another one might be in the medical field, right? Maybe you're a scribe and a doctor has written some notes, or he's written some suggestions for nurses for care for a bunch of patients for a given day. It would be kind of cool to be able to train this AI on that doctor's voice, and then when messages get sent out to family members maybe or back to the patient, it's not just notes written out in an email, it's notes written out in an email with an attachment of the doctor actually speaking, right? I don't know about you, but I like to hear my doctor's voice when they're telling me something, especially if it's concerning news. So that would be another use case. But again, you can kind of let your imagination run wild with this. I just want to say, though, it's clear that this is a super, super powerful technology. It's very, very easy to use, and I think it has the potential to be very, very dangerous and concerning. So please use this responsibly. Don't go out there and start stealing people's voices, politicians' voices, and making random stuff, whatever, right? Like, please don't do that. ElevenLabs does keep track of what you're doing, and you do have to agree to not do anything dangerous or harmful, or no copyright infringement or impersonation or fraud or anything like that if you want to use this API. So keep that in mind. You're going to be legally bound by that if you try to do something illegal with this. So please don't do it. But that out of the way, this is a really, really cool tool. And like I said, in some subsequent parts to this video, I'm going to show you how we can combine this with some of the AI builder stack that's in the Power Platform to do some kind of neat stuff. Maybe some translations, maybe some automatic dictation like we talked about just a minute ago with knowledge base articles. We're going to see where we go with that. But in the interim, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about how things were done, I know I went over that pretty quickly, but it's pretty simple. So if you have any really specific questions, let me know. Like I said, there's some things I'm not going to divulge, but the information is out there. If I figured it out, you can too. And yeah, just a fun video to make, so I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you again very soon. Take care.
Thanks for watching Doing It with AI. Hope you enjoyed it.
It never gets old.